I love history, but the problem with history is first you need to know all the content, which is an enormous amount. Then you need to be able to remember all the content. Then you need to be able to apply the content. And those are all three difficult steps. Not impossible. So how you get around the first one is pay attention in class, make sure you're not having to read the stuff later on, but still read the textbooks. Do the notes, and make sure you've got the notes before, like, assessments, etc.
So did you have a particular structure for your notes for ancient history?
Yes, I did. It was just more by dot point. So in the syllabus, you'll have sort of dot. So say under, for example, Pompeii, leisure, you have like leisure, politics, society, and those are all like different syllabus dot points. And if you're doing ancient history, out of almost every other subject, learn what the dot points are, because the questions are taken directly from that. So I would then have an entire like Word document which is dedicated to, say, like Pompeii society, and then within that I would have subheadings of women, freedmen, slaves, social structure, evidence, that sort of thing. And then the key is, I found, for both writing the notes and then learning notes, is subheadings. Break it down. Now this worked for me well because I'm a visual learner, so I see things and I'm able to remember them. I understand other people are auditory learners, so it would be of mixed help to them. But for me, breaking things down into systems and then building back up again is the best way for first writing the notes and then learning the notes, which is itself difficult.
So did you use multiple textbooks when you were constructing your ancient history notes?
Mostly, we had one textbook which we used a bit. I just used whatever materials I had available to me. I didn't go a huge amount of my way, so I didn't like go to the library and pull out every textbook I could. Because you've also got to be realistic about how much work you can do. There's no point putting an enormous amount of time into getting as many notes as humanly possible. It's all about relevant notes, stuff that you can use in essays and questions. You want to be targeting, you want to be specific in what you're doing. So for most part, I just took the information that was available to me. So like handouts my teachers had given me, I read through and took up relevant stuff. Textbooks I went through. But if there was ever an area I thought I was lacking in, which occasionally I would come across, like for example, plumbing in Pompeii, I would go through all my notes, look for what's relevant, and then if still wasn't enough, look up the internet.
Excellent. So now that was the first step, which you said was collating materials and reading the notes. What did you then do for the second step?
Well, second step was probably a little bit easier for me because I do have a good memory, and secondly, I already knew a lot of stuff anyway because I've always been interested in it. The second step is learning the notes. So, and that's just generally, so you probably should be reading over your notes and just be aware of what the stuff is. Now, most of the time it's not difficult because when you're studying like a topic for, ages at a time, you're not going to forget the stuff at the beginning of the topic because you're constantly going over it in your head. But then when it comes to exams, it's a matter of learning them. So, and that can be difficult because the notes often are quite big. So the key thing for that is read through them, make sure you understand them, say them out loud, come up with lists in your head, write essay structures.
So not full essays, but just little dot point structures.
Yeah, I'll get to essays. Essays are sort of the third point. This is also learning the content. The key, I would also focus on, especially coming up with lists of, say, stuff that's really hard to remember. So if you're having difficulty remembering, say, stuff about Pompeii art, then put that to the side and put that in its own list of things that you have difficulty remembering, and then focus on that. I found highlighters good, highlighting things that I had difficulty remembering. If you looked at my study notes, the original was all set out and organized, and then the final version had all these like scrolls, arrows, multicolored things, symbols. It would be impossible for anyone but me to study them because I'd gone over them so many times that I figured out which things I did know and didn't know. And then and the third step is applying that knowledge. And this is, once again, this is where I fell down at the beginning of the year, and I picked up in it, where I knew a lot of the stuff, but I wasn't really good at applying it.
So it's probably the area where most students struggle.
Yeah, exactly. So these first two are, they're try-some, but this is where the marks are. And that's because this is where the engagement in class comes in, because you learn how to communicate effectively, because even if you, in my experience, even if you don't know the stuff, if you're just like a wonder of words, you can make it seem like you do. Now, it's not to say you sound so much better if you actually do know the things, But being able to communicate effectively is such an important tool. So talking, even if it's with an inanimate object, like explaining the arguments for how the decline of Pompeii happened to, say, a water bottle, allows you to process it in your head. So I would also come up with practice essays for various doc points. And when I say practice essays, I mean two things. Firstly, I would look at a doc point and think, these are the things I want to mention in it, and have like headings. So I want to mention this, I want to mention this, and then within it, I would have, okay, now these are the sub-things I want to mention within this point. So that's another memory exercise, and examples, etc., quotes. So I would have like for each syllabus, I've done the sort of practice essay structure, and we need to learn those. And then I would do still lots of practice essays. And practice essays are good for two reasons. Firstly, they teach you to communicate effectively. Every practice essay you write improves your ability to write about anything, period. Secondly, it prepares you more for that particular syllabus. So the ancient history essay I did on, say, Augustus was an essay I had done 2 times before that. So it just made me more prepared to do that particular essay. And finally, doing practice essays also just reinforces the knowledge you've got in your head. So even if you're just working off, so you're writing down your essay and you've got your structure next to you, along with knowledge and quotes and things that you haven't remembered yet, but by writing the essay, you sort of get into a routine of, okay, I need to bring this up, I need to remember this quote, this piece of evidence is valuable and should go in this section. So when you're writing without it, without having to have necessarily remembered everything on the list, you think, wait a minute, this evidence needs coming here. Now, that's not to say, once again, practice essays will do the job of remembering all of it, because the worst part is getting 3/4 of the way through your essay and realizing that piece of that piece of evidence would have been useful for the first third of my essay. But writing practice essays, as with most humanities subjects, is such a crucial part of doing well. And then, of course, once you've written practice essays, show it to people, particularly teachers, other students as well, because then you can get insight into what's factually correct, what's thematically correct, how your structure is, and how effectively you've done it. And feel free to explain to them, this is what I was trying to achieve. Was I getting there? Was my goal correct? Was my execution of it fine? And then try to perfect it. You'll never have a perfect essay, and it's all about trying to get there as much as possible.
So you would take feedback and make a point then of going and
working
on the essay?
Pursue your teachers. They will hate you by the end of the HSC. But you pursue them, you try to get as much feedback as possible, and that applies not just ancient history, history extension, English, certainly English. English practice essays and getting feedback is the most important thing of the course, because you don't have the content to remember. That's pretty much the biggest piece of advice. Get feedback. And as this was something I learned, when you write the HSC, you're not going to write the best essay of your life. Because of stress, because of timing, and because of just general probability. The probability you're going to write the best essay of your life on that day is very unlikely. What you can do is through practice essays, you can write a damn good essay, and just improve your probability of writing such a good essay by just improving your general standard.
Just your general writing standard.
Exactly.